Okay, we are recording, and there should be a message across the top of your screens about the fact that it's being recorded. Just 3/4 of a minute as people come in. If everybody that's on board, you want to type in a message in the chat, say hello, give your name, maybe city. I saw one registration from Pakistan, Karachi, Pakistan, and that person registered 2 months ago. So
well, we've got extreme reach now. That's nice.
And so halfway around the bloomin' world. All right. All right, we are live, and welcome everyone, and there will be more joining us as time goes by. But this is the Titletown USA Power BI user group, just in case you were confused. But I think if you click the link, you probably got to the right place. Thank you for coming, and we'll get underway. We are recording so that after the meeting, if you want to review our presenters' sessions, you may certainly do so. All right, we're going to do a little bit of news and updates, announce when our next meeting is. We'll show a little bit about new Power BI features and custom visualizations. We don't get too deep into that because that could be a session all by itself. We rely on you to do your own homework there. And we will have two speakers today. Pedro Medina, who hails from Haystack in Minneapolis. He is the founder and data farmer. And I gave your presentation a title, Pedro, I hope you don't mind, using the codeless Naim platform to automate ETL for Power BI. That makes it sound really cool and technical. And then Derek Pogeman of Heartland Business Systems Little Shoot. I also made up another title for him. Analyze how much other people are making from TikTok with Power BI. Wait a minute, that didn't come out quite the way I intended. Well, we'll let Derek sort that out for us. It's good to have Inigo Montoya remind us to be careful about our metrics. All right.
Nice.
News and updates. This event, which we've talked about the last couple of meetings, is an annual event sponsored by Dynamic Communities. This year it's in Nashville at the Gaylord Opryland, and if you haven't been to the Gaylord Opryland Hotel, it is enormous. It's an environment, one of the largest hotels in the country. But this event has evolved. The website, and I just checked today, seems to suggest that virtual is the way to go. I paid my registration fee for the in-person event, and now my only concern is if more and more people get cold feet about traveling and in-person events, I might be like a BB in a boxcar at that hotel. The event typically has about 500 total presentations covering the whole gamut of Power Platform, as well as all of Microsoft's business accounting and customer relations management products. That's Dynamics GP, SL, NAV, AX, Dynamics 365. I do not know how many will be recorded this year, because that was a feature that they started doing last year. That's the first time they ever recorded sessions during the event. But it's 3 days. Well, according to that, it's 4 days, the 6th, 7th, 8th, and 9th. And sessions get underway on the 7th officially. But there you see the prices, which are good through today, in case you get a burr under your saddle to sign up right away. You have until this evening. Okay. The Power BI Symposium, I talked about that at the last meeting too. That went off very well on June 8th. Um, and there were, from all accounts, there were about 300 people that attended. It's kind of hard to get uh, figures for that sort of thing. The pictures you see there are from the recordings that I made personally of the sessions that I saw. The guy you see on the left, Gregory Petrosian, very good MC, I have to say. He did a heck of a job. And then three of the other guys were making their presentations from overseas. Reed Havens and Greg himself are both in the U.S. So definitely international. And I saw a map, a distribution of all the attendees, and it covered the earth, even New Zealand. People watching the symposium from there. It was an astounding spread of people attending from all over the world. Our next meeting is 2 months from now, Thursday, September 24th, and probably do online. You know, we're still kind of wondering about live and in person. It would be real nice to do that, but if not, we've got the online thing down pretty well. So if you have some Power BI tip that you are particularly proud of, something you'd put together for your own company, and you'd like to show it to us, we'd love to set aside time during our meeting to allow you to do that. This is a user group. It's not just us talking at you. It is participatory, our members. I do want to say something about the leadership here today. Both Paul Van Dyke, our Toastmaster, and Greg Freilich, who is the president of the group, they're in attendance, and they'll be assisting with answering questions during our question and answer period. I don't know if did Nicole make it? Is she in attendance? Have you seen Greg?
No, I haven't seen her yet. So
okay, all right. She'll come when she comes.
She's missing out on her special call out.
I don't know if this has ever happened to you. Did it work? Well, yes, but actually no. There's a whole new set of Power BI memes that are springing up across the internet. Okay, some new features. As did last time, this slide deck is available now on the Power BI user group Green Bay website. If you had to have registered by going to our page, you'll find the slide deck in the library. And the deck has all these links. These two links for the June and July Power BI desktop updates. Those are pretty interesting. I mean, they're official Microsoft people, and they give the advances that have been made in the product during the month. I found this gal to be very interesting too. Both of these videos are about 6 minutes in length, and she breaks down the features of the monthly updates. She's an MVP. Her name is Ruth Pozuelo Martinez, and she's got a good handle on the best features of the updates. Visuals that have come down the pike. As I said several months ago, I bought this very nice tool from DataChant. You may have heard of the name Gil Raviv. He has a book out on collecting, combining, and transforming data using Power Query in Excel and Power BI. Very good book. And his website is terrific too. He was the one that came up with do-it-yourself COVID-19 Power BI PBIX file. But this application catalogs all the custom visuals on the Microsoft App Source site. And from last month, where we had 262, there are now 270. And you can see on the slide that it's in order by descending order by release date. So most recent being just 6 days ago. But it lets you go directly to those visualizations, and you can look for the ratings, you can look for the ranking, all kinds of analysis on this sheet. So one of the newest ones, you can see the fourth one in that list, Sandance 2019. This is a sample screen from Sandance. Each of the tiny squares represents a single record in the data table, and this sample file is available from the download page for Sandance, and I downloaded it so that I could, fiddle around with it and make a screenshot for you. But you might be interested to know what's the source of the data. You can see there's a lot more men than women. And you can see in the upper right-hand corner the true and false key. False red, true is green. This is a representation of the number of people that were on the Titanic. Green means they survived, red means they didn't. Notice that the number of men that did not survive is quite a bit greater than the number of women that didn't. It was a kind of a stark thing to see his sample data, but this does a nice job of representing that in a powerful way. That's one of the new visuals that are available on the AppSource site. And to introduce our main speaker, if you can imagine Bill Murray, dogs and cats living together, Power BI and Tableau in one solution, mass hysteria. Our main presenter is Pedro Medina, founder of Haystack in Minneapolis, using the codeless Naim platform to automate ETL for Power BI. I'm going to make Pedro the presenter. And let's see, here you are, Pedro. Maybe you can do that yourself, yes?
Yep, I got it. Can you see my screen?
And in just a moment we will. I'm going to
I was
make
seeing,
sure that
seeing it. Yep.
You are good.
Yep.
Okay, excellent. All right, Steve, well, thank you so much for having me. Let's jump right into it. So as Steve mentioned, my name is Pedro Medina. I'm the founder and chief data farmer at Haystack Data Solutions. We're a full service data consultancy based in the Twin Cities, so not too far away. So the topic of today's presentation is going to be a new way to load data into Power BI using an open source platform, drag and drop data science platform called KNIME. And it's really strong at handling not just ETL, but pure data science as a whole. And so I'm going to jump back and forth between KNIME and Power BI to kind of showcase some differences on how you might handle the same problem. But before we get into that, I'm going to walk through a few slides to kind of build and set up the context. And that way we can have some good questions and Q&A at the end of the presentation. So without further ado, let's just jump into it. A little bit about me. My background is in electrical engineering, Georgia Tech. Used to work at General Electric, leading commercial analytics center of excellence, where we built a number of models. Back in 2015, I founded Analyze This crowdsourced data science, which is one of the largest analytics groups here in the Twin Cities. We have approximately 2,100 data scientists as members, and you can see our meetup address right there. And so some of the groups that we've done challenges for include the Habitat for Humanity, the Science Museum of Minnesota, among others. So our purpose, I'm going to just run through these slides really quick, but our purpose is helping our clients discover profound knowledge and actionable insights from their data. And the way we do this is through advanced analytics, which includes machine learning, AI, predictive modeling, data management, cloud migrations, et cetera. And then, of course, BI, business intelligence, dashboards, reporting, et cetera, et cetera. But a big part of this is also what we call self-service analytics, helping businesses create citizen data scientists by way of these tools such as KNIME, Alteryx, which is another one you may have heard of, very similar to KNIME. So our core values, the one that I'll draw your attention to here is sharing with the community. We do a number of partnerships with the University of Minnesota and groups like SACNAS, along with Analyze This, to do all kinds of group-based and nonprofit-based activities throughout the Twin Cities as well. So our tools, we do, as I mentioned, we do cloud migration, data science, visual programming, business intelligence, and this is essentially our full stack: AWS and Microsoft Azure, Python and R for the data science programming, Alteryx and KNIME for visual drag and drop programming, and then Tableau and Power BI for data visualizations. And just last point I want to make is that we are hiring Power BI developers. And if you're interested, there is my email address right there, info@haystackdata.com. So let's just jump into it really quick. The challenges of data analytics. As we all know, 90% of our time is spent gathering, blending, and cleaning data from multiple data sources. And we are also faced with a number of data silos, which are killing our insights, right? So you have all of these point solutions in place, no way of connecting them in order to develop a full 360-degree view of your customer and business performance. And don't forget about Excel hell, right? So a lot of organizations still rely primarily on Excel as their primary analytics tool. I have nothing against Excel per se. I think it's a fantastic tool, but you don't want to base your entire enterprise analytics based on this software. So 9 in 10 spreadsheets contain errors, size limitations, et cetera, but the ones that I really want to draw your attention to are the bottom ones: lack of transparency, repeatability, automation, scalability, and especially the lack of advanced analytics. So also we're dealing with the evolution of the game itself, right? So before, you can sort of rely on back of the card statistics, hits and batting averages and so on, but we live in a sabermetrics world today, right? And this requires new skills, which happen to be very hard to find. So you need answers now, but your time to insight is too slow because you have too many bottlenecks, right? And so with so many issues, can you really trust your data? Most would say probably not. So the quest for business insights really requires 3 things in my view. The first is faster data blending and analysis. The second is a repeatable and scalable processes. And then the third is a code-free, code-friendly, intuitive platform for end-to-end self-service analytics. And that's going to be the focus of our presentation today. So this is our solution. I call it the K.A.R.P stack, real catchy name, but it essentially just stands for KNIME, Azure, R, and Power BI. And so when I talk to any one of my clients, I essentially tell them that a combination of these 4 tools, you may not need all 4 of them, but a combination of all 4 of them will give you essentially everything you can possibly ever need for your self-service data analytics and data science initiatives. So many of these are open source, so R and KNIME primarily, Power BI being very low cost, and then Azure, of course, for your cloud solutions. So this is the K.A.R.P stack at large. So our solution to help simplify, standardize, automate, and visualize. So you've got all your source systems on the left. That includes internal and external data. You blend and enrich that data in a visual environment such as KNIME. This helps you do your data cleansing. You apply your business rules and you're able to validate these rules in real time. You can push that cleansed data, your data pipeline essentially, you can push that output back out to Azure. You can perform advanced analytics and predictive modeling using R. And then finally, any data visualization that might come out of all of that work can be done in a tool like Power BI, right? So this is essentially the K.A.R.P stack in a nutshell. So the focus of today's presentation is going to focus, as I said, primarily on KNIME, where you can blend, prepare, and enrich your data from multiple data sources and push that output directly into Power BI without having the need to build out complex Power Queries or DAX measures or what have you, or SQL for that case. So what is KNIME? First of all, it's pronounced NIME, like lime, and it stands for the Constance Information Miner. And Constance is a university and in Sweden, and so that's why a lot of folks may not have heard about KNIME here in the States. It is probably the biggest analytics platform in Europe, whereas Alteryx, in terms of drag and drop, is the biggest one in the US. Alteryx is a very large corporation, just went public last year, $1 billion plus valuation and quickly growing. Constance is, KNIME rather, it's a relatively smaller company, but they are starting to get a foothold here in the US. And they have been around since 2006. It was developed by Silicon Valley developers working at the University of Constance. It is written in Eclipse, if you might happen to know what that is. It's a Java-based multi-language software development environment. It can be quickly mastered by non-technical users, and in case more firepower is needed, you can extend quite easily and integrate R, Python, Java, and many more languages. And lastly, it's a consistent leader / visionary in the Gartner Magic Quadrant. So I don't know how much stock you might place in that, but a lot of people do. And I've got the Magic Quadrant from 2018, which shows KNIME and Alteryx being both leaders. And as of 2020, KNIME dropped a little bit down in the visionary pack, but these things fluctuate year over year. But ultimately, what I'm trying to point out is that KNIME is a highly regarded platform. It is not an unknown and obscure tool amongst data science enthusiasts. So why KNIME? It helps you essentially get back the hours that you are losing. Because it's drag and drop and visually intuitive, you can gather and prepare multiple data sources and build an intuitive workflow with absolutely no programming required. So no SQL, no mQuery, no DAX, no Python, no R, nothing. Just pure drag and drop, and the options are limitless. I mean, the things that we've been able to build out using KNIME are things that we've done before in tools like R or Python, except it might take us a couple of weeks to do that in R or Python, sometimes even more. But in a drag and drop environment, you can do something that would normally take you weeks, sometimes months to produce, and do that in a matter of hours, sometimes minutes. So I like to describe KNIME like Lego blocks for data. It's just a fun way of working with data. It's purely visual, and it's self-documenting because it's, as you build out your logic, you're essentially documenting the process in an inline manner, and you can read it from top to bottom, left to right, very intuitively, very easy to onboard new employees that are looking to work on your data initiatives, right? So it comes down to codeless versus programming, and so I like to ask many of my clients, what do you prefer to work in, right? So would you rather work in an intuitive visual environment as on the left, or sift through reams and reams of code as shown on the right? Now, I take no issue with programming in general. On the contrary, I think that programming will always be around. It will never be supplanted or replaced by tools like KNIME or Alteryx, simply because you can essentially do anything you can possibly imagine in code. But the challenge with programming is that there are very few people who can program, and fewer still who can program well. So the KNIME recipe for faster data visualizations. The first step is to gather all of your data sources needed for your analysis in one easy to use platform. You can join all of your data with in-database blending for Microsoft SQL Server or Azure. You can quickly cleanse your data to remove outliers and other data noise. And you can transform your data so that it is ready for analysis without any manual formulas. That includes DAX, SQL, Power Queries, et cetera, as I've mentioned before. But key to all of this is really number 5 here, right? Because data visualization obviously is what we work in. We're all Power BI enthusiasts. I've been working in Power BI for probably close to 3.5 years now. But there's really more to data science and analytics than just data viz, right? And so oftentimes we'll be wanting to build out statistical and predictive models to drive either new solutions for the organization or even new visualizations. And tools like KNIME can give you that sort of ability without having to program that out manually. And lastly, you can automate your output directly into Microsoft Power BI without having to deal with scheduled refreshes or the dreaded gateway errors that we often have to deal with. You can automate the entire ETL pipeline and push that cleansed, as I like to say, rectangular data directly to Power BI service and connect all of your reports and visualizations to it. And I'll show you a sample of how to do exactly that. So I'll quickly run through these slides, but as you can see on the left-hand side, we have what's called the node repository, and that's broken out by logical feature or process. And so we have like an input-output category, and that's where you have things such as your Excel reader, your Microsoft SQL Server connector, or even your Azure Blob store connection, right? And these are all called nodes. One thing that I really happen to love about KNIME, and something that Alteryx does not provide, is the ability to check your work at each and every logical step. Each node has its own output table, and you just right-click that node, and you're able to see if your logic, if your process is giving you exactly the data that you expect to see. And if it isn't, you can quickly go back and drag and drop and modify your logic sort of on the fly. And that helps you produce an analysis very, very, very quickly, because you're essentially able to double check your work as you go. So joining databases and in-database blending. So we have the DB category that includes a number of processes that you can apply in these steps that you can push to the database and in-database blending. And below we see sort of a sample of what that might look like. So column filtering in the database, renaming columns, date filtering, joining tables, sorting tables, et cetera, et cetera. That's all being done on the database side before you're pulling it onto your canvas for further analysis. And so cleansing your data, manipulating your data, right? So you have the data manipulation category, and that includes processing steps at the column, row, or table level, as you can see on the left-hand side. And that includes things such as filtering, transforming, combining, splitting. And down below, you can see an example of splitting rows, applying a math formula to each split, concatenating the results again, pivoting, right? So transforming from rows to columns in this case. How do you handle missing data? You can do this very, very, very quickly, dragging and dropping, almost at the speed of thought, right? So I'll show an example of what that might look like. Handling duplicate data, et cetera, et cetera. So transforming your data without any formulas. Again, we have the transform category on the left, and that includes things such as concatenate, grouping, partitioning, pivoting. You even have some more, sophisticated possibilities such as bootstrap sampling. And another point that I want to make is that in terms of statistical capabilities, because KNIME comes from academia, it was built out of a university. It is very strong in terms of its analytics and statistical capabilities. So there is really no limit to what you can do in this tool, I've come to find. And this is an example right here. So step 5, building your predictive and advanced analytics. We have the analytics category, and you see things such as Bayes, naive Bayes. You've even got neural nets. You can plug into TensorFlow, and if you happen to know what that is, it is the AI library for Python. Building out your neural nets, decision trees. You've got ensemble models. You've even got PMML. And so, for those who may not know, PMML stands for Predictive Modeling Markup Language. You can think of it almost as an HTML for predictive models, and that helps you productionize your models. Say, for instance, on a server or database. Very powerful feature to have. And then you see the statistics category on the bottom. So you've got connectors for everything from TensorFlow to H2O to Spark, you name it. And then all the big data connectors I showed, Azure, it's got AWS, Google BigQuery, and it goes on and on and on. So when it comes to Power BI and automating your output directly to Power BI, we have the Send to Power BI node. And you see that it's in the KNIME Labs category, and that's because this is a relatively new tool. And I'm actually quite proud that Haystack did play a part in sort of helping KNIME gather requirements and helping them scope what this tool would be needed for and what we would require it to do. And so I was part of a sort of a committee that kind of helped make this little tool happen. So quite proud of that. But another point I want to make is that we also see Tableau. So not only does it send data directly to Power BI, you can send data directly to Tableau, even using the new Hyper feature in Tableau. So very powerful tool in that regards. So I like to say that KNIME is the one and only platform that you need to orchestrate data analytics across your entire organization and all of your tools and different data sources. And so to recap some of the benefits of KNIME, as I said, it's open source, completely free. They do have a commercial version, which is their KNIME server. And even that is reasonably priced, in my opinion. So no visual workflows. So visual workflows means no need for coding, such as in SQL. It's extensible to SQL, R, Python, and other languages if you need it. Low code / no code means it's a force multiplier. So what I often tell our clients is that you have your line of business staff. These are folks who may be more comfortable working in Excel. They are very familiar with the data. They're very familiar with the business. They know the right questions to ask. The missing piece is the ability to code and program. And tools like KNIME help address that missing piece. And that's why this is a force multiplier. So you might have a gifted analyst or data scientist on your team. If you're a small organization, you'll be lucky to have any whatsoever. But if you can train your organization to use tools like KNIME, you've essentially empowered them to build sophisticated analytic and data solutions that you otherwise probably would not be able to. So as I said, you're able to blend data from any data source. Inline documentation provides that transparency I talked about. Big data nodes allow for petabyte scale analytics. And the automated nature of these workflows allow for consistent results. And then lastly, you can leverage advanced analytics such as machine learning and AI. And so the key benefits of the K.A.R.P stack, as I said, easily join and blend data from multiple sources, perform predictive, statistical, and spatial analytics within a single user interface with no coding, and lastly, empower everyone to make better, more informed decisions faster while harmonizing business processes. So I've got some case studies. We're not going to go over these, but you can quickly see some samples of what we've done in the past using automating ETL, using the KNIME framework, pushing it out into an Azure data warehouse, and then building reports off of that data in Power BI. So we'll quickly run through some of these, and then we'll jump right into KNIME, which is what I'm sure you're all waiting to see. Again, reminder, we are hiring Power BI developers, and we are willing to train in KNIME if anyone is interested in learning the tool. So thank you very much for sitting through those boring slides. And without further ado, let's just jump right into the demo. All right, so if you can still see my screen, we are now looking at the KNIME analytics platform. And so very quickly, we see the KNIME Explorer tab up on the left-hand side. This is where you can organize your workflows and your code and your solutions together. So for instance, I've got this demo, I built a folder for it. I've got all of these workflows saved very nicely in this folder. I do have access to a cloud-based hub where I can push all of my solutions out into the cloud and share it with others. They provide extensive examples that you can start building solutions off of, and all we need to do is just double click, and we'll quickly see all of the content that they provide for training. So you see it's broken down by data access, right? Connecting to common databases and common data files, REST APIs, Git. You can connect directly to your Git, for instance, and you can expand this and see, and just click on one of these and it'll open up in the platform. ETL, data visualization. It even has its own reporting tool. So they use BERT, which is an open source visualization platform, all within KNIME. I would not choose BERT. I think I'd settle for I'll stick with Power BI. But you do see, some of the possibilities, right? So, scripting and tools like Java, R, Python, right? So if you're interested in something like that, they'll give you an example of an R snippet code. Reporting and data visualization and ETL data manipulation. Some of the big data solutions, so big data connectors includes, Databricks. We got a Google Cloud example, et cetera, et cetera. So there are limitless number of examples, and the forum and the community is very active, and folks share a lot more resources out there that are available to everyone. So beneath that, we see the favorite nodes. These, you can save the nodes that you most like to work with. So I like to work with things like the file reader, group by, row filters, etc. But they even provide this AI-powered workflow coach. And the great thing about this is that as you're building your logic, that workflow coach will actually update, and it'll start giving you a list of recommended nodes for you to start building your workflow from, right? And so I find that to be a great feature. So right here, right after the joiner, you're most likely to use the math formula, the sorter node, or the group by, right? That's fantastic. And the more you use the tool, the better and smarter it gets. And then below, we see the node repository. There are over 2,000 nodes available. So pretty much anything you can ever want to do, you can do it. And if you can't, then of course, there's always R and Python to extend capability. So again, read, write. Again, we see CSV reader, Excel reader, the general file reader. Write, you can output to, again, any number of sources. You've got the data manipulation, as I showed, column-wise, so binning, converting, filtering. At the row level, same thing. We can filter, transform, and these are all the types of filters that you've got access to, right? So writing out a rule-based filter, which I'll show an example of, a reference row splitter, applying, checking for duplicates, all of these things, right? And that's just on the manipulation side. On the analytics side, I showed some of the data mining capabilities. So things like naive Bayes predictors, clusters, neural nets, so MLPs and PNNs, for those who might know what those mean, decision trees, and it goes on and on and on and on and on. Statistics, we've got hypotheses and some of these, more obscure statistical analyses are possible. The database side, as I showed, structured, so JSON, XML, scripting, Java and R. The KNIME labs, which I showed, so I've got the Google API connector the send to Microsoft Power BI, and a few others. We've got some social media reporting, so sending out automated emails, et cetera, et cetera. So that is a node repository. And then in the center, we see a sample canvas. And so this first sample that I'm going to walk you through is just an Azure cloud example. I am connected to a sample database, SQL DB in Azure. And all I have up there is AdventureWorks, right? So I've installed it in here. And now I want to pull it in here. And then I want to push it to Power BI while simultaneously writing the output into Excel. And I want to update a dummy dashboard that I built for these purposes, right? So let's see what that looks like. So all I'll do, I'll reset the workflow. So I'll just hit reset all, and that'll reset the entire workflow. And now you can see the street lights right underneath each node. So yellow means that it's ready to be initiated. Green means that the output, the node has run its course and the output is ready. And then red, it's either waiting for data. And then if you see a yellow triangle with an exclamation point, it means that something went wrong, right? Very simple, very intuitive. And finally, so here we see I've broken out the tables by different functions. So I've got the customer tables, I've got the product tables, I've got the sales tables, and I'm just doing the transformations that I need. So I'm selecting the tables that I want, I'm filtering for the columns that I want, then I'm reading the data in, I'm joining them together, right? And finally joining all the tables together. I've got, I'm appending a geolocation. So I'm bringing in, so long lat just for sample purposes, appending it to that data set, right? Renaming some columns. In this case, I'm renaming column 1 to longitude, latitude, and then zip, very simple. And then pushing that out directly to Power BI. And how do we send it out to Power BI before I run this, just to show you what that looks like? You double click, you press authenticate. In this case, we're already authenticated. And then you can either create a new data set, you can delete it if it already exists, or you update an existing data set, right? And you're able to select the workspace. In this case, I've only got 2. And here we're ready to go. So now all we do is press play. And you'll see all the nodes start to run right here. You see how quickly it runs. And you see the data flowing. Right now it's sending to Power BI. And that's it. So we jump back to the Power BI service. And there it is. Ran at, let's see, 243. So we see that this is a data set we just pushed just this second. We go back into our dashboard. Look at the data source that's available to us. There it is right there, refreshed 42 seconds ago. Select, apply. And I mean, all of this can be done automatically, right? You wouldn't have to do this step. I'm simply trying to show that we are in fact connected to that live data set that we just pushed. And now our sample dashboard is updating, and we've got current data in there, and we can play around with it and jump into table view and back and forth and do whatever we want to do, all without having written a single SQL query, a DAX, or M query or Power query or anything. So essentially what we've just shown is how anyone in the organization can build the data set that powers this type of visualization without any coding required, right? We did all of this visually. So, and then simultaneously we output that data set into Excel, and we see that it is right here, right? And that's the same data set we pushed out at 2:43. So this can be scheduled to run automatically. So you wouldn't even have to press play. You can put it on a scheduler and it'll run behind the scenes automatically without doing anything. So are we holding questions for the end, Steve, or are we taking questions as we go?
It's really up to you.
We have some in the chat if you'd like to take some now.
Yeah, that'd be great.
All right. Let's see here. The Alteryx, is that the only competitor you can think of right now to KNIME? Or are there other tools of the same kind of thing? I'm just, are they kind of in the same quadrant, or is there stuff that Microsoft has that you're aware of? So we kind of get a sense of this tool compared to other areas.
That's a great question. So there are a few other competitors. There's Data IQ is another one that's very popular. You know, I think RapidMiner kind of falls into the similar space, right? Kind of a drag and drop data science platform. I mean, even SAS, right? SAS has been kind of, over the years, has been moving away from code and kind of more into UI-based development. So this is, I do see this kind of as part of the future, not the full future. As I said, code is never going away, but these drag and drop environments are definitely going to play a bigger and bigger role as we go. You know, there's really no limit to what they can do. Sure. So yeah, so Data IQ, there's also LavaStorm, there's a few others, but I'd say that KNIME and Alteryx are definitely the world-class leaders right now in this space.
Makes sense. You mentioned free open source kind of to get started. Do you mean free as in production workloads or just for development?
Great question. So this tool is completely free and open source, right? So I'll show you what I mean. One little neat feature that I love about this, it's got its own built-in browser. You don't even need to leave KNIME. And so if we go into KNIME, search for KNIME, it'll take us straight to their website, and you can download the tool directly. Its license is GNU, General Public License, and you know, they talk about their open source philosophy. They do have these community partners that build nodes. Some are commercial products, right? So Continental, the tire manufacturer, they're a heavy KNIME user. And they do have a package that I believe is commercial, and a few others, but the vast majority of the tools are open source, and the platform itself is open source. They do have the server version, and I believe the smallest server is for 4 concurrent users. In terms of cost, annually, it's about $8,000 the last time I checked. That's actually a great price, because when you compare that to the cost of a single Alteryx license, a single user license for Alteryx is getting close to $6,000 now. It's like $5,000 some dollars. So the fact that you can download this for free and build anything you want from it and put it directly into production I think is just a gem.
Is it fair to say that the server-based version of KNIME is needed if you're starting to set up scheduled automation of these things?
Great.
Or is there some scheduled automation that happens without a server?
That's a great question. So the biggest selling point, you're right, the biggest selling point for the for the server version is that you can schedule your workflows. However, since most of our clients happen to be small and medium-sized businesses, I try to do things as cost effectively as possible as I can for them. And so the workaround for that, you don't really need a server. What we do instead is that we build batch files. You know, basically a batch script, and just a little piece of code that just runs using if you're using a Windows operating system, you can use the Windows scheduler to run that batch file. That'll kick off the KNIME workflow, and then the process runs fully automated. So or you can use cron for that. There's a number of other tools that you can that you can use for this process, but you don't really need the server. Eventually, as the organization starts to scale and you have more and more users and you have more and more complexity, you're going to want to naturally adopt the server, but most companies don't need it starting out.
Makes sense. Good. You might want to bring up your slide that had the K.A.R.P. K.A.R.P. breakdown, because the next question is related to that, and that'll help frame reference for everybody.
Sure. This one?
Yep, that'll probably be good. So the recommendation on K.A.R.P. versus the direct to Power BI feature, would it be fair to say a smaller company without Azure can skip the AR part?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. This is really a kind of a pick and choose. What I always recommend is that you adopt a tool like KNIME to sort of have it be your go-to analytics platform, and then a tool like Power BI on top of that for data visualization. So yes, you don't need Azure and you don't need R, but at some point, once you get into more of the advanced analytics and more sophisticated data science solutions, then you might work with a team like mine to build them out in code. But 99.9% of the solutions you'll need can be fully built out using KNIME, and then build your data visualizations in Power BI.
Fair, good. Now we got a tougher question. You got a tough crowd here. Some of these people are knowledgeable about their Power BI. So why would we use this part over Power Query? If we're familiar with Power Query and Power BI has Power Query, what is KNIME adding?
That's a great question. And my answer is simply this. When you're building out a Power Query in Power BI, such as something like this, what you've essentially built all your logic in a walled garden, so to speak, right? So you've built it out for Power BI and really only Power BI. Now, yes, you do have the Azure platforms, and you've got the ML, machine learning, and Databricks, and you've got there's just a host of cloud-based solutions that Microsoft provides. But the typical organization is probably not there yet in terms of their analytic capabilities. And so when you've gone through that trouble to build out your Power Query, now, mind you, we are Power BI developers, so we work in Power BI all day long. I love Power BI. I consider myself to be a Power BI fanatic. The problem comes when you need that solution and that logic for something else. So, and if Power BI doesn't have a connector for it, or if there's no way of getting that logic out of Power BI, out of that Power Query, and then connecting it to your other platform, whatever it may be, it could be a legacy system, it could be another platform entirely, it could be some obscure tool that only exists for your industry. You're saying, wow, we've got this logic, we figured out the logic, but it's only being used for data visualization purposes at this point. My argument is, why not build it in a tool that's completely agnostic to any platform other than the KNIME, obviously, but it connects to virtually anything under the sun, can pull data from any source, push data to any source. And so if you need it for Power BI, you have it for Power BI. If you need it for your obscure legacy platform, you can use it there. So, a lot of the Power Queries that we build are very, very sophisticated, and they take a lot of time to produce with, custom calculations and whatnot. And you're like, wow, it'd be great if we can use that business logic for some other purpose other than just a data viz. So, that would be my counter argument, that, most of the time the logic serves one purpose, and it's just for that data visualization. But there are many instances where it becomes more of a broader business logic, business process that will be needed to be integrated into many, many platforms, and for sometimes unforeseen needs. And so a tool like this is completely agnostic or untethered to any data viz platform. So I don't know if that makes sense or not.
Yep. Yeah, that's pretty good. Next one, does KNIME only connect to Power BI service, or can it work with the Power BI report server as well?
Currently, it only connects to the Power BI service.
Gotcha.
Yep.
Very good. And next question was, would there be any report performance, query performance using a tool like KNIME to do all the ETL versus Power BI? In my experience, more Power BI query steps, especially going wide on the data tables, typically this to poor query performance. So is there advantages you'd speak to in terms of taking that out of Power Query, because there's more here that can help with performance where Power Query is can get limited?
Absolutely, and I have noticed a stark performance difference. In just my personal experience, and actually, let me just jump right into an example here. So this is an actual real-world solution that we built for one of our clients. Obviously, I'm not going to go into the details of the data, but this is for a P&L report, right? A profit and loss. And so what we did, this logic, here's another use case that I love about working in a tool like KNIME. This logic was figured out and produced first in KNIME, right? So we understood exactly what we needed, the data that we needed, how to get that logic in, how to clean it out, how to handle, various, instances and solutions and whatnot, and stumbling blocks, and et cetera. We figured all that out in really just a matter of minutes. Once we have that logic, we just said, okay, well now let's replicate it right into Power BI. And so because it's visual and the drag and drop, you can essentially use this to build out sort of a minimal viable product, a proof of concept, drag and drop real quick, play around with it, export, right click, look at the output in a second, you see exactly what it looks like, you move on to the next step, and you're just clicking and dragging, right? And so, and even a step beyond that, oftentimes all you need to do is you just select the node, you click the next node that you want, right? And so we want another filter here. Now I'll go back to the favorite nodes, double click here, and there it is. And it just pops up and appears. You don't even need to move anything. You just click. And so it's just, you're developing almost at the speed of thought. And so what we often do is that we build out the concept first in KNIME, figure out all the features and the nuances of that logic, and then go and replicate it in Power BI if we need to. Or now that we have that was before the Power BI node was available. Now that we have it, we don't even need to do that anymore. We just push it straight out to Power BI and skip all the Power Query steps and avoid the performance issues that we experience, and especially the data limitations and the slow loading with the service, and the refreshes. And I get emails every day, hordes and hordes of emails from data, refreshes that fail in the service, right? And if we can push it out using a tool like KNIME, I find that it's much more consistent, much more reliable, and we don't have to deal with those errors and those issues anymore.
Nice.
Yep.
Good. Thank you.
Absolutely.
No more questions from the chat. But
Well, I have a question myself.
There we go.
Pedro,
Yeah.
I'm very familiar with the data you're talking about here. And you go back to the beginning of your flow chart,
Yes.
and I can see exactly what you're looking at in the table selection. And for someone like me that is very deeply familiar with SQL, and I would do all this stuff directly in SQL and then feed that to, say, an Excel workbook, whatever. I'm very curious about, say, with the account master table, how, just to see a sip of the kind of things that you're doing to plot that element into the table selection. I mean, it's all, I like the frog dissection method. I mean, if I had this thing and I could open up all the nodes and see the data as it's progressing through the system, that would be helpful. But it's also, all right, where am I at the start? I know what tables I have to look at because I'm familiar with the product.
Yep.
not KNIME, but with the database you're talking about.
Great
Um,
Plains. Yep.
so it's can you do a little bit of delving into just that at the start?
Sure, absolutely. That's a great point, Steve. And so so what Steve is mentioning is that this SQL Server in this instance we're connecting to Great Plains. It's a Microsoft product. It's a ERP, Enterprise Resource Planning tool, and it's often not the most user intuitive or user friendly tool to work in. So you have these tables that have these alphanumeric names to them and whatnot. And so, we simply drop in the SQL Server connector. We pass in our connection strings, our credentials. We open up the table selector. And right here, in this case, it's not going to work because I'm not connected live to that database. But what you would see is that you would click right here, table, select a table, and you would have all of the tables that are available in GP available to you. And the same is true for any database that you're connected to. You can select the schema that you want to choose to connect to. And very, very nicely for a SQL user programmer like yourself, you can pass in custom queries. So not only a lot of these manual steps that we just walked through, if you're more comfortable working in SQL, just type away SQL to your heart's content, right? And so you would simply passing in your SQL. You can evaluate it here on the fly, so you see the output. You can see if the output is exactly what you want. You see the metadata, and then you have these things that are called flow variables. And flow variables are essentially dynamic parameters that allow you to connect and update the workflow as it changes. And so Naim even provides these sort of user interface where you build these applications where you could have like a form, and then the user would say, I want to look at only data for this territory. You pass in the name of the territory. That gets passed through as a flow variable. It updates the filters in the database and et cetera, and then it outputs the data exactly as you want. So I'm not sure if I answered your question, Steve, but you can connect to GP or Great Plains using the nodes or SQL if you're more comfortable going that route.
Yeah, thank you. That's very helpful.
Absolutely. And here we see at one last thing I want to mention on this workflow is that the way I've structured this is very, it's documented, right? So if I were to hire a developer tomorrow, I can get them up to speed very quickly because anyone can look at this and know exactly what's going on, right? We see the in-database processing section. I've basically highlighted these nodes. You see the filtering going on. What am I doing? Column and date filtering. Here I'm joining the databases. I'm grouping, etc. I'm joining the input data. I'm doing some date time, right? So I'm extracting the year and the month, right, from a given date time column. In what localization? US, and I mean it just goes on and on and on. Then I'm joining that output back. Now here, this is the rule engine. And this is one of the sort of filtering mechanisms that you can use. You just write in a little snippet. You've got all of these math functions and whatnot to use. You can select your field, and you pass in the logic that you want. How do you want to handle that missing data? Again, some sorting and et cetera. And then finally, output. Here I'm showing an example of how easy it is to simultaneously send that output, not just to your data visualization platform of choice, Power BI in this instance, but to Excel, writing that solution back to your SQL Server. So say you create a table, you've processed that data exactly as you want it, and you want it written right back to your source system as a new table and updated every time new data gets entered. And then finally, one little trick that I like to do is I add a data validation section where I take a snippet of that data, I filter it out, and I do a simple test to see if it's giving me the exact numbers that I want. So here I'm basically taking expenses versus budget data, and then grouping by certain categories, and then pivoting that data, and then the group by actually allows you to not just group, but to aggregate and do all kinds of aggregations in there as well. So very, very, very user-friendly and intuitive, and a lot of fun to work in. So I'll just keep going with other samples unless I'm over my time. Let me know.
No, go right ahead.
Okay, perfect. So jumping on, and just to show you that I do, I take, my own medicine, so to speak. I do my own financial analysis using KNIME. So in this case, I take my, my bank statements, I pull them out of my bank, for instance, and here, this is a little, a loop where I'm basically concatenating all of these statements together, right? I'm using Google Sheets as sort of a temporary database, right? And updating that Google Sheet, then I'm grouping and categorizing my expenses as I like, and then pushing that output right back into Google Sheets and connecting Google Sheets to Power BI. So my final financial dashboard is built in Power BI. And so if you guys want to get a kick of what this looks like, and hopefully my my meager financial situation won't be exposed, but you simply reset, and now you'll see the loop. All of this thing will just be going back and forth. And as I like to say, it's kind of like a Rube Goldberg's machine for data is the way that I like to describe it. I have some notes that I make for myself here, little things that I need to fix, et cetera, et cetera. So as you're collaborating with another user, you can document. Another cool thing here, just to show you some other features. Let's see if it's here. Where is it? We've got, where is it? Okay, so we see the outline. So as you can navigate on the outline section, so it gives you a big bird's eye view of your workflow. You can go dive right into your files. You've got the console that gives you, the output for your data. You've got a node monitor. You've got all these other things. But there's another feature in here I kind of wanted to show you what it looks like. And let me see if I can quickly add that in here. Description? No, it's not description. No, it's it doesn't matter. But anyway, there is a way of documenting your workflow and having links inside the workflow, and links to what we often do is we'll put a link to like a Google Doc, and as we're working in this thing, we'll say, hey, fix this, do that. We need to, these are the next steps in the solution that we're trying to build out. So it's a great way of sort of collaborating and documenting your work with others. So let me just go ahead and run this, because I always get a kick out of just seeing that little loop work. And right now I've got all these statements running in, and I'm hitting play, and there it goes, right? And so now you'll see it go back and forth that quick. Now the data is pushing right back out to Google Sheets, and up it pops and automatically opens my Google Sheets, real nifty. And so that is, in the blink of an eye, I just ran through several thousand records, kind of a neat thing. So just moving on, just stop me at any time. Just I just run through.
One question popped up in the chat, kind of thinking about sources. Can it read from PDFs?
Yes, absolutely. So it does have a PDF scraper. You can actually pull tables off of PDFs or just the text. And let me see if I can find a sample. I'll just search for PDF, hit enter, and I'll see what pops up in the samples. I don't see an example in here, but if you go into the forum, I've seen it it's a topic that comes up quite often. You go into the KNIME forum, very, very active. You simply go in there and you search the forum and you look for PDFs. I'm not going to do that, but you get the point, right? PDFs, and I've seen all kinds of workflows and solutions available. Oh, one other thing I really want to show you. The extensions, the KNIME extensions. So we click on File, click on KNIME extensions, and you'll see a pop-up appear in a moment. And I'll quickly want to show you just how broad and how deep some of these add-ons and extensions go. And obviously, I don't have all of these installed because I don't need them, but you do see things like Amazon, Cloud, Athena, Redshift. They have strong chemical analytics, right? So they can do like full-on molecular analytics, very powerful stuff there. Again, coming from an academic background, Google Cloud, HTML, PDF writer, they do have the ability to parse data out of PDFs. I know that for a fact. JDBC connector for SQL, what else? KNIME integration, quick forms, R statistics, SAP, text processing in various languages, big data connectors, BigQuery, Apache Spark, H2O, what else? Community extenders, whatever that is, chemical informatics, image processing, the labs, lots of neat stuff in here, deep learning, Keras, TensorFlow, for those who happen to know about artificial intelligence, S3 for Amazon, Dynamo, active learning. I mean, it just goes on and on and on and on and on. And so SharePoint, they have a SharePoint connector, very important for those who work with SharePoint. Tableau, as I mentioned, XGBoost. What else?
How about other areas of the Power Platform? Do you know if it can run Power Automate flows?
It does not. I have not seen Power Automate, but I almost consider Power Automate kind of not a competitor, but it's sort of I think of it almost like as a procedural drag and drop, logical thing, which is essentially kind of like what we use KNIME for, right? And so we'll alternate back and forth. We'll do some things in Power Automate flow, but if it needs a little bit more firepower in terms of the sophistication of the analytics, we'll go with.
And it's not like you kick off the Power Automate flow from a KNIME flow.
We haven't done that yet, but there's really I don't see why we couldn't do that, right? I mean, we may be able to just push that data out, say to Azure, and connect flow to the Azure database, and then proceed that way. That's off the top of my head, that might be a possibility, right?
Sure. Good. Okay. Thanks.
Yep. So those are the extensions. And they're more and more being added all the time. And I'll just keep going until you tell me to stop. Here we see a very simple logistic regression example. We see the learner versus the predictor and the scorer, partitioning your data set, 80% for training, the other 20% for testing, a normalizer, and then you see the input data set. We can right click, read table. There it is. It just pops right up. And it's just a simple data set. We've got about 6,000 rows of all of these features for wine and the quality and the color, et cetera, and they're just using that to predict the quality of the wine. Let's reset that, and we'll see how quickly that'll run. Hit play. Just read that data so quick. Look at that. Now it's just training it. Boom, you're done. Right click the score. We look at the confusion matrix. There it is. Is there a visual? There are the accuracy statistics. Here they are. We see the partitioning, etc. So a simple regression. Here's another one. This one does have a plot. I'm not going to run it. I'll just show you what the plot looks like. So we right-click, view the line plot. There it is, a simple interactive line plot. We can do all kinds of different things, column selection. We can remove certain columns, add certain columns back. There it is, color legend. We can change that, missing values. Lots, and some of these are more interactive than others. So that's another example of a logistic regression. Here we are predicting churn. So this is kind of an ensemble method. We're basically taking, and this is what's called a component. And so a component is a way to easily share your logic across the organization, so you can save it into the hub or just email it to somebody. So you right click, say open component, and we see what this looks like. Let's make that a little bigger. There it is right here. And so all it's doing is bringing in data from Excel and a CSV, joining it together, getting area codes and filtering, and then we're partitioning, and then sampling, and then outputting. So very simple little pre-processing step, kind of concatenated, condensed down into a component, and now we're training the model. So decision trees, logistics, gradient boosted trees, random forest, naive Bayes. We predict, we basically filter and rename, we append all of these probabilities together, and then we've got the classification inspector, the table writer, and then we see the color manager, and this will show us a table with colors, with the input. Let me see, what's the one that I want to show you? It's the inspector. This might take a second to load, but this is a very interactive way of kind of playing around with your model. It takes a little bit to load in this case because there's quite a bit of data behind it. So any other questions while this loads?
Well, this would be a good place to. Oh, you got another question, Paul?
I thought of one. When it comes to change management, does this have any help for keeping track of versioning or deploying, keeping track of the changes that are happening here?
Absolutely, great question. Yes, it does. The server version does.
Okay.
So the server has a versioning control process built in. As again, we don't really use the server very often because we just find different ways of working around it. But yes, there is versioning control built in.
Sure, thanks.
Yep. And so here we see the an interactive binary classification inspector, and we can just start selecting our different model and see how our random forest is formed. See the confusion matrix.
Steve, I think your fan is overriding the sound.
And so here, all of this is interactive. We got a little slider scale. We can just mess around with the different thresholds. Again, you see the rock curve moving, and all of that just built in to our simple model. So that's again another example of its modeling capabilities. Here we're reading data from what was this? I believe these are energy meters, and so I think we're pulling in about 500,000 records. We see how quickly it loads. It's a very snappy platform. That's another thing I like about it. We don't see the little spinny wheel that we often get with Power BI, unfortunately. It hurts my heart to say that, but it's kind of true, right? And so this thing is very zippy. This is an example of a meta node, very similar to a component. It just helps you kind of clean your workflow down. We click on that, we expand it, and we see the, kind of like what you do, you're just doing some date time manipulations, little Java snippet, so a little piece of code. We click on that, we see what it is. You're just manipulating time, then go back, close that out, and we're doing daily values and hourly values, and we can run that if we want. But then again, we see the sort of an autocorrelation matrix. Social media, you can connect. You've got all of these social media connectors, Twitter, you got a Facebook connector, et cetera, et cetera. Do some K-means modeling on that. Let's see, what else can I show?
Well, we are pretty much at the end of the of the time for your presentation, Pedro.
Yes,
Looks like an immense playground.
it is a lot of fun. It's fun to play in. I gotta say that.
All right.
Be
Oh, we
sure
had,
to put this info at Haystack data in the chat, and really, all of our Power BI user group members, please copy that right now into an email and send them a thank you for presenting for us today. We getting the chance to say hi and thank you to our presenters is pretty important. So come on, Power BI user group members, copy that in and send a thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
all right. Thanks,
All right,
Paul.
guys, thank you so much for your time.
You know what I wish we could do, Paul, maybe you know how to do this, is to turn on everybody's microphone for 10 seconds so we can all applaud.
I don't know that we can force them turned on, but
All
we can
right.
say we can make a call for it. Want to do that?
Thank you, Pedro.
All
I
right.
appreciate it.
Thank
so
you.
Thanks for your time. Thanks for having me.
All right. I'm going to take back control here. And oh, you relinquish control. Good, because Derek Pogeman is on board, and I think Derek, you can just go ahead and request control, and we'll be flying right into your session.
Sure. Yeah. Let me get started. Let's see. Requesting control. Where's that located? I might be missing it.
Should be in the it's not in more actions, but there's a
Are you sure you're trying to request control or share your screen?
Let me share the screen. Let's see if
Yeah,
it might work out. We're fine with that.
That's what I
probably
meant to say. That's what I meant to say.
Let me get started with that. Okay, so let's start out. So my name is Derek Pogeman. I'm an intern right now at Heartland. Let me get out of here. Probably not what I want to be. I'm an intern right now at Heartland Business Systems as a data analyst. So I've been working a lot with Power BI lately, just in the time I've been there so far. This is kind of a little foreign to a lot of you guys of what I'll be presenting today, but it's basically going to dive into how much money TikTok users can possibly make from the app today. So I'm going to kind of give you a background on what that is, because I'm guessing a lot of you guys probably aren't too sure or have seen your kids or whatever dancing to stuff on TikTok here and there. So basically what it is it's a social media platform that's been kind of growing in popularity for the past like couple months or so. It's actually right now the most popular app on the App Store. So if that gives you a perspective of how it's doing. Mostly it's a lot of young people. It's basically a social media platform that they can share, create, discover other videos, and kind of express themselves in that way through like dance and other types of videos.
Hey,
So,
Derek.
Yeah, for sure.
Right now, we're just seeing your team's page.
Yeah, I was going to give a quick introduction and then dive into the report after.
Awesome.
I'll dive into the report right after this one. So, but thank you for letting me know. So let me give a background on the TikTok. So basically, my sisters have been telling me that apparently you can make a lot of money from TikTok, and I was confused on that. So I wanted to dive deeper into that. And apparently they post a lot of advertisements on their posts. So I was looking through the TikTok feed, and here's kind of one of them that I just found just searching for a couple minutes, and I'll play this video for you, but it's about 20 seconds. So.
Wow, can I get a photo?
Sure.
Cool. Say cheese.
Cheese! No, he's friendly. Buddy, it's not real cheese. It's just a thing.
So if that kind of gives you an idea of how they're advertising on there. So basically with this report that I'm going to dive into, I'm just going to talk about how much you can possibly make off of this these advertisements and just kind of show you different cool ways of showing that visualization. So let me start off with kind of where I got the data. So where I got the data was a little tough as it is because they don't have a lot of places to retrieve that information from. So I actually found this website. It's called Influencer Marketing Hub. You can basically type in any username. So can type in a TikTok username and it will tell you some statistics with that. So it'll say, it'll tell you the amount of followers, the amount of hearts or likes, the posts, engagement rate, and then some estimated earnings per post and their profile picture. So basically, and then I did some personal digging as well, just to find the country as well as the sex and then the category of that user. So from there, I imported that into an Excel document, and this is kind of my main Excel document to kind of organize all that information. So we have all of the stuff I talked about before, as well as the sex, the category, the country. And then I added one custom column for total earnings to show the estimated earnings per post multiplied by the number of posts to get their total earnings. So basically, I also then had another data source. This was for the images for the different TikTok users. So in my report, I have some profile pictures, and they basically, I imported that as a file folder from my local machine into the Power BI report. So when I first started, this was the column that it gave me when I imported that file folder. So the first, I did kind of 3 steps to be able to import that in. I first converted this binary format into a text format, and then that showed right here. So I converted that into a text. And then second, I had to create a custom column that appended this tag right here to the front of that text. And then lastly, once I closed and applied that data, I was able to change the data category to an image URL, and then it embedded that information, the pictures, into my Power BI report. So that's kind of how I connected to the data and how I did that. Let me dive into the actual report and show you guys what I did. So this is the report I made. If we look at the top left visualization, this will show the followers, the engagement rate, and then the possible earnings for each of the different TikTok users. So again,
Can you zoom in on that one? Go into focus mode?
For sure. Let me go into focus mode for you. All right. So if we zoom in, basically this possible earnings value shows you, like I said before, that earnings per post multiplied by the number of posts. So obviously it seems a little deceiving. 88 million sounds like a lot. So this is saying if Lauren Gray, if she advertised on every single one of her posts, this is how much she could possibly earn from that. So obviously most often the users advertise 1 every 5 to every 7 posts. So this is divided by about 5 to 7, but it's still pretty extensive in regards to how much they can make. So then if we navigate over to this tree map, this will just show you the category that the users are assigned to. So we have each user assigned to a certain category. So we have some media personalities, we have some singers, we have some actors, some dancers, and then some business accounts, as well as 2 other categories. So we can actually then dive in and see, okay, I want to see what users are making up a majority of those earnings for the singing category. So I can click into here, and we can see that Lauren Gray, again, is coming in at the most earnings for the singing category, coming in second, and then so on. So then if we go over to the pie chart over here, let me navigate out of the drill through. But if we go over to this pie chart, this will break down all those users, the top 50 users, by their sex. And then you can see that it's about an even split between male and female. And then we can see there are 5 other accounts that aren't either male or female. So if you click on those, we can kind of look into who those accounts are. We can see that a majority of them are business accounts, as well as some of them are media personality. So Flight House, business account, as well as these 4 on the bottom. And then it looks like there's a media personality of a dog. So it looks like there's a dog account called Jif Palm. That's pretty popular. So then these cards right here, so these are just some quick analysis on some key metrics with the data. So we have the followers, the posts, the hearts, and then the engagement rate. That'll sum up all the data. So it's not going to give you the exact, So that will sum up the values into a card. So if we navigate over to the users by country, So this visualization will break down the users and say where they are located. So it looks like a majority of them are from either the US or India, and then the rest are kind of allocated here and there among some different countries. So on the bottom left, this visualization is probably my favorite so far in Power BI, working with it this summer. It's the decomposition tree, as you guys probably know. So if
focus group, focus mode, that one too.
Yeah, for sure. Sorry. So we have a breakdown of the possible earnings of these users by different dimensions. So if we click this plus sign, I can break down these possible earnings by any of these 4 different dimensions that I added into here. So for example, they can go in any order, but I'm going to do country first. So if we look at the possible earnings by different countries, we can see that United States is bringing in the most earnings, coming in at second, and so on. Then we can click this plus sign and even break that down further by some other dimensions, such as, let's look at the category. So we can see in the United States, it looks like media personalities bring in the most earnings. And then we can actually break those down further. Let's break it down by sex and see males bring in the most for that media personality, and then break it down further and look at those specific users that are bringing in those earnings. So it looks like this user named Little Huddy is bringing in the most revenue from it. So that's kind of the decomposition tree. I like it. Gives you a good breakdown of some different categories that you break the data up on. So, and then this table on the bottom right, I enjoy the table because this is when I talked about before about the images being imported and embedded into the report. This is kind of how they look. So it shows you, here's the username, here's their profile picture, and some other statistics that come along with that. So
now, was that image embedded in the data? That's why you kind of converted it and put that image type base 64 in front of it? Or is this going out across the web to pull those?
It is not going out across the web. It's actually just on the local machine. That's why, yes, like I converted that over. So I'm basically pulling all that information from a file folder on my local machine and importing that into here. So,
thank you.
But otherwise, that's mainly what I built for this. I thought it was kind of interesting. I thought it'd be a fun switch up, kind of get you guys looking at some different type of data. So any other questions that you guys have in regards to this report?
Did you find that they bringing all this data down from TikTok was a lot? I didn't see how many total rows it ended up bringing in.
So let me actually show you quick. It wasn't too bad because I actually did have to manually enter them in, but it didn't take too long. I only did 50 users, so just the top 50 users on TikTok. But no, it wasn't too bad for entering in the data. Unfortunately, they didn't have a downloadable source that I could quickly pull that from. But
well, that's a heck of a project then. I mean, I know about putting data in when you don't have a convenient source for it.
Sure.
I imagine since this originates in China, that no data is going to be conveniently located.
Exactly. Yeah, there's been some issues with all of that, the whole TikTok being owned by China and everything. So that's been kind of a discussion lately too. So
that decomposition visualization, is that a custom viz that you
it is not right now. I don't know if this updated, but it was in the preview features. You can check for the decomposition tree.
I can say that it came out of preview about a month ago, and this is one of the most powerful visualizations. I've been waiting for this since the days of ProClarity 8 years ago.
Oh, so it's cool.
It is a very powerful ability to give the end user the ability to break it down however they want.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, this is just working with it for 3 months. So far, this is my favorite visual. I can seem to incorporate it into a lot of things, and it seems to give a good experience, interactive experience to the user. So I enjoy it a lot.
The one downside I noted, and it's still out there and they're working on it, is it does not work on mobile. So when you put this in and bring it up on a mobile device, they won't be able to do the cool things here. But otherwise, it's a very powerful visual. It's got other things that could be its own presentation with artificial intelligence It'll kind of try and break down high and low values and try and expose data that might be hidden. You might be, if you're just drilling down the top values the whole time, you don't really get to, did you know there's a pattern here where hidden down in one of your dimensions, it's one of your highest hitters. And so there's some stuff with AI that it attempts to do. It's a pretty cool visual.
Well, Derek has set the bar really high for people to do show and tell here in our meetings.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
Another thing is it won't run on Power BI reporting services because it is a service, Power BI service only type of visual. But it to me, it's one of the ones that would make the case for why Power BI service is the way to go. Getting a lot of kudos in the chat. Great work.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate it. But yeah, I appreciate the letting me present this. It's quite interesting. Helped me get some presentation skills out of the way that I've been working on as well. So I appreciate it. It's fun presenting to you guys.
Yeah, very good job. It's a cool tool.
I love it.
Yeah, this is the first I've seen anything to do with TikTok, so I've heard about it, and it's just been out of my social life completely. So this is kind of cool to see.
Yeah, one of our team members actually recommended a while back doing a presentation on this. I think he's in the chat, Josh, but I think I took it seriously, but I don't know if it was a joke or not. But
so is this something that you would say post to the there's a place on the Microsoft site where you can put your own stuff, like a showcase.
There's a showcase
page.
gallery, I think, out there. Sure.
Yeah. Because this would qualify.
Well, then I'll definitely look into posting it out there. I think it'd be very important information for people to read about TikTok.
All right.
So, well, thank you much.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you, guys.
All right, Derek. And here we are, back again. I'm going to go back to our slides. And for Derek, how much other people are making from TikTok. And I did want to show one resource that I ran
your slides
into.
yet, Steve.
Oh, not yet?
Sure.
Let's see.
Share your screen.
All right. Oh, that's right. It is now my thing.
Yep.
Share. And screen one. All right.
There we go. Good.
One thing I found recently, I mean, you stumble across information on Power BI or anything that you're using regularly, and this is just a website, IT Data Diva, and the comment by the lady that put this up. If you're new to Power BI, or even if you're more experienced, this reference sheet is nice. Now, none of these links on the right-hand side are live. This is just a
minimize my face so people can kind of see all the way down there.
Minimize your face. How's that? Okay. There is a link to the reference sheet here at the top. So you go to that site, and then you'll see this grid, and then the grid itself will have the links to, these are all Microsoft sites, planned features and training documentation. So I thought it was a nice resource. And now I'm going to turn it back over to our Toastmaster, Paul, who is, I have to say, Paul is really, really good at drawing out. We'd like to have people asking general questions if you'd like to.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Steve. You're making me blush. So this part of the meeting would be an opportunity for our user group members to ask some questions of the group, maybe get a chance to, there's other experts around here in our user group that are dealing with something similar, and we can kind of be facilitating that during this section. So if you have some questions that are kind of more general, Power BI, or some things happening in your world, and kind of an ask the experts of the rest of the user group, now's a chance to type something in. Or if we can try some people unmuting, as long as we don't get 15. So go ahead. No questions coming up.
Yeah,
Gotta have one or two. We're watching. People might be rapidly typing.
I'm going to put up the slide for the next meeting as a, I just want to have a general thank you for everybody coming, but this is not the end. If you have a question, and this is a good time to ask it.
Yep, excellent. Question on the chat, has anyone tried data flows yet? Any thoughts on them? I'm going to jump in because we use data flows on our Power BI area quite a bit. When he's referring to Power BI data flows, there is the ability to do the Power Query that we saw before in Derek's presentation, doing those online completely within the Power BI service, and it's called a data flow. When you go into your Power BI, I can actually share my screen and pull up one. Pull up a quick way of how that looks. Hold on. You can create a data flow right inside of the Power BI service. If I jump out to my workspace and go to creating something new, data set, streaming data set, upload a file. I guess I can't do it in my workspace. Hold on, I'll go to our development area and say we've got ability to make a data flow. When you open up a new data flow, and if you're familiar with the Power Query part of Power BI, you'll find it very similar. I'm going to jump right to adding a new entity. That's the term for bringing in more data, bringing another table of stuff in the Power BI data flow area. You select your source, be it some sort of database. That's not a good example. Let's go to SQL Server here, very standard incoming one. I just want to get to the point where you see the same thing that you'd see when you're in Power Query. Where is SQL Server? Blank query, blank table. Okay. There we go. Okay, I'm gonna have to put a bunch of stuff in here. Shoot. The bottom line is that in these data flows, it works a lot like Power Query. So at the point where you connect up, get past this point, and get your data, you are actually using Power Query, and it's all inside the service. That can be limiting because it's out there on the service outside your company's firewall probably. So what you can access is probably much more limited unless you get into some of the other advanced stuff with setting up a gateway and making sure you can reach back in to query it back out. Our goal in the longer term is to have many data flows set up within the service so that those in our Power user community in our company can actually reference those data flows and build their own reports right from those flows, which have their own refresh schedule and things like that. Anyone else have any thoughts on data flows?
Hey, Paul, Ryan, Johansson.
Oh, can barely hear you.
I'll
Try again.
Speak up a little bit. So
there we go.
We tried to implement the data flows probably a couple months back, and what we learned is that it actually imported directly into the PBIX. Now, have they since changed that with their recent direct query? I suppose I haven't had much exposure to it, but just trying to get any news on that.
Sure. When our experience is with Power BI data flows is that they bring the data in the service into technically behind the scenes. It's the Azure Data Lake Storage Gen 2. It's a lot like the common data services. So the data gets stored up in the Power BI service in entities. That's when I showed before that you're selecting to bring in an entity, it's going to create a table-like structure stored out there with all your fields and all your rows full of data. And then that flow can be set to refresh or whatever, and it looks like a Power BI Power Query table So if you were to then want to build from that a Power BI report in Power BI Desktop, you say your source is a Power BI data flow, and it will look like a table. It'll bring it in, and then you can bring it in like you would other tables in your Power BI report. So the data flows themselves store their data up in the service in these entities that are behind the scenes being stored in an Azure kind of storage area.
So
Does that
when
answer
you,
the question?
I think so. So when you go to, let's say, you got your PBIX and you're developing out your model and whatnot, it doesn't actually import that into the PBIX. You're saying it's kind of more of a live or direct connection back to the data flow?
In a way, but because when you're using Power BI Desktop and you're saying I want to go get my data, I either have a choice of building the whole Power Query. It's embedded in the report. It's going to suck all the data in. That's one. That's your first option. That's the normal where everybody starts. The second option is you're referring to a Power BI data set, which is more like the cube, the finished data set model that might be up in the service. Or the third is a Power BI data flow. And when you do that, it's going to pull it back into Power BI Desktop from the service. So if there's 100,000 rows out in the data flow in the service, it's going to pull all those back into your Power BIX report. And you now are going to be using Power Query within Power BI Desktop again on that data to make a final report and data set.
Got it. Great, thanks.
Yep.
We use data flows. Just kind of a quick thing that we've noticed is it's really handy to, if you want to use like online data with your like data warehouse data. So you can create a data flow for online data without having to set it up in your data gateway. And then you can use your like data warehouse data that is set up through your gateway. And then once they're both in a data flow in your PBIX file, you can combine them because now they're both a data flow data source. So that was just kind of a nice way not to have to set up like every online source in our data gateway, but still be able to combine it in our reports. So that was one nice feature that we noticed about data flows.
Sounds like a potential presenter to me, Paul.
Yeah, we've been trying to get Wallow to step up for a while now, haven't we, Wallow?
Here and there, Kelly's better at it.
I was going to say with our data flows, though, one thing we found is you can't do incremental refresh, whereas with data sets you can. So that's one thing you're kind of trading off is when you put it into a data flow, you now have to refresh all the data every time as opposed to being able to do it incrementally.
Is that still true with Premium? I had been researching that now we have in my world Power BI Premium, and we should be able to do incremental refresh on our data flows.
Potentially, we don't have Premium, so I usually gloss over their features because it just makes me jealous.
Yep. Yeah, makes sense. Well, another thing that on that whole premium versus not, we have found that with our data flows, we were getting them set up without premium, and they would act a little inconsistency. Sometimes they'd time out for no reason that we could really determine. We've moved to premium for a bunch of other stuff, so we moved our flows to premium, and they are not timing out anymore. So I think there's a big difference in performance around data flows in premium versus not.
Was there a row level security issue? Is that not doable in data flows, or is that?
Correct. There is no row level security in data flows. If you really want row level security, you're doing that at the data set level.
Okay.
We import our row level security information in through a data flow as well. And we keep all of our data flows in a secure workspace that others don't have access to. And then we create the data set off of that, which becomes public, and that contains all the RLS.
Yep. It's a matter of at what layer are you having a power user, end users start to make their own reports, and the best most ideal option is off of their data set, because your data set has all the relationships, so everything defined. It's more about pivoting and more about creating your visuals. If you are dealing with people who want to start combining different kinds of data that aren't already combined in the data set, then in our universe, that's where we have some smaller group that then could use flows, because then they could be like picks and choose what they're really putting together, and they have to deal with the relationship and joining and merging of the different data.
Yeah, and another big benefit of the data flow, one of the main reasons we started using them was just to prevent a lot of pings to our database that would dump a lot of data. You know, so like if everyone's creating a data set directly against our data warehouse, you know, it could be the same data, 20 different people, and you know, it's hitting your database all the time.
Yeah, and you can set the flow on its own schedule, so it refreshes once a day. It doesn't matter if people want to hit it 37,000 times a day. It's not hitting the database.
Correct.
Any other QA ask the group type questions? I didn't see anybody pop up in the chat, so we might be close to wrapping up. Steve, you're muted.
I wonder if anyone has any first reactions to what Pedro showed us, that KNIME environment. When I asked him about, you know, taking a look at, just let's look at the start. How do we pick a table? And you know, that's just enough of a pebble to get the avalanche going. But any reactions from the people that are in attendance here that would care to speak up?
This isn't about it, but how many users are out there, like in the United States, using KNIME? Do you have a ballpark on that?
That's a good question, Greg. They do have their American headquarters is based out of Austin, Texas. They do have their annual conference, their summit in Austin, usually around November every year. And they're pretty well attended. You know, I'd say maybe a couple of thousand people. I do know that there's some big companies. There's a company in the Twin Cities. What's the name of the company that makes the hard drives?
Seagate.
Seagate. Yes, thank you. So Seagate is they are a KNIME user. They actually converted from Alteryx into KNIME. And then there's several others. So there is a large group and several user groups throughout the U.S. And as a matter of fact, I am actually kind of thinking about starting a kind of like a Midwest KNIME user group. So if anyone starts playing with KNIME and they like it and they kind of want to help me build a KNIME user group for the Midwest, I'm kind of thinking through that possibility. But to answer your question, there are lots and growing.
Okay.
Good. We had a chat comment that said they already downloaded and installed it while this meeting was happening, and they like it so far. So
awesome. Glad to hear.
I will share that thoughts that went through my head were I was very interested in how it really tied into Power BI and where I might find a use for it. The questions that were asked about Power Query by the group, or back when you answered, were the same for me. Like, really, would I use this versus Power Query? And I'm glad you kind of walked that through. The other thing that jumped through my head was a little bit of disdain because you mentioned it's based on Eclipse, and I'm not a fan of Eclipse-based tool sets, but it looked pretty promising. But
You are a nerd, Paul. And it's proof that I want to know if the phaser behind your head is set on stun. That's what I'd like to know.
It's old style. It's got 10 different settings. It's the old Star Trek one.
Well, one thing about the visual representation in KNIME that I like, because I like to see stuff. I mean, Power Query, yes, you can go through the sequence, and in Power BI, there's all the steps, and with a little text description in a stack. Well, in KNIME, hey, it's a visual recipe. All the steps are understandable, and they're not, you know, stacked together. And I like the fact that, you know, you right click on one of those steps and you can see, okay, here's what would happen up to this point. And then you go to the next step and give me a sample of what is produced at that point. That whole extra dimension of seeing what you're doing, you know, it's like coming from a text-based interface into a GUI. It's very much that kind of a step.
It's instant feedback, as I experience it, right? And kind of when, you know, and again, I don't want to downplay Power BI in any way, shape, or form, because it's my preferred data visualization platform. I love Power BI. I work in Power BI all day, every day. And most of our visuals are based off of Power Query, because it's just, you know, much easier. You're in that tool, you just build out the Power Query really quick, and you build your visual and you publish it. But for, you know, kind of like larger projects that are a little bit more in depth, I find it's much more intuitive for that very reason, Steve. It's just drag and drop, and you can sort of validate at each little logical step whether you're on the right track, instead of kind of finding out after the fact, you know, that, you know, you've made some logic error. And another benefit is that, you know, in terms of performance, you know, like calculated columns, they can be very expensive, right? Computationally. And instead, if you sort of build it out in a tool completely outside of Power BI and push that pre-built data set in, and at that point, all you might really need to do is maybe build a couple of measures, which only run when that that visual gets instanced and initiated. It makes the report overall much, much, much faster. So another thing to kind of consider.
Can you speak for a minute to the question of the data set that ends up getting published into Power BI? We often take advantage of things like the certification of that data set, marking it as branded as certified, that kind of thing. And I don't imagine that there's any reasons for it to be set up for refresh, because it's going to be supplied by KNIME.
Right.
So what other things would we want to be keeping in mind about that data set that's been created in the Power BI service in comparison to other data sets?
Right. In terms of certification, you know, once the data set is in there, you know, I haven't had any issues certifying the data or promoting that data. At this point, it's really just, and just behind the scenes, FYI, one thing I forgot to mention is that you're essentially leveraging the Power BI API, right, to push that data into the service. So that's how it's all working in the background. So it's really using a Power BI feature to get data into that service. So once it's in there, everything else works just the same. So certification, you're right, the refreshing, obviously you're connecting to source systems that, you know, you outside of Power BI, and so you want to maybe schedule those refreshes in KNIME. But once that data is in the service, you know, you can do with it what you will. So
what about measure creation and enhancement?
So the measures, you know, again, what I would normally do is connect to that Power BI data set as a Power BI data set in the visual, right? And it's only on the desktop that you start to build out those visuals and then build out the measures and then publish back to the service. All that KNIME at that point is really handling is all of the ETL and the data load, but all the measures and calculations that you would want to build beyond that is all done in Power BI desktop. So there is no limitation at that point, because that's just from connecting to that data set as a live data set and then publishing back into the service. So all the measures can be layered on top without any problems.
Okay. We've been experimenting with the idea that our data sets become their own power user tool by having all the measures in them that are needed by our end users that are power users. And so this makes me think that we'd be ending up with a data set that KNIME created that we would not be giving to our end users, and we'd make another Power BI data set with all the measures that would be available to our power users.
Right. That
on
wouldn't
top
be.
of it.
Yeah, that necessarily wouldn't be the case. You would just be connecting to a live Power BI data set at that point and building your measures on top and then pushing it back. So it's just the same, really no different than had you created that initial process in Power BI to begin with. And just
you do end up with two data sets out in the service. One that is not for end user consumption, and the other one which is part of the report, Power BI report.
True. Well, there is that one,
okay.
That one thing, but yeah, assuming that you wouldn't be able to take care of all of those calculations on the KNIME side, you're absolutely right. You would probably want to, once you push it out, that'd be a new data set at that point.
Well, a lot of the measures that I'm thinking of that get added to a data set or a cube are things that are like time intelligence, DAX.
Right.
So do you say, can those be done on the KNIME side?
You can. I mean, one of the sample workflows I had up was essentially around time intelligence. And what you would do at that point is do all your calculations and extract whatever you wanted in terms of time-wise and add that in potentially as another column and then reference that column within Power BI. Okay. But you're right. The measures themselves, is they're really sort of, I think of them more as sort of an aggregate feature. And it's really being calculated at runtime. You would want to build that in Power BI. There are use cases for both, right? The way I kind of do it is I do sort of the heavy ETL and the heavy lifting on the KNIME side, and then I kind of make the data set. I enrich the data set with more measures. I wouldn't do custom columns or anything like that, again, because they're very expensive. And then push that back out into the service. So that is one way of doing things. But there are many ways of kind of getting at that solution.
Good, thanks.
Yeah. And just as an aside, have you seen that new visual that was released? I believe it was last month. Trying to recall the name of the visual itself, but it gives you the option of selecting within the dashboard or report, selecting the metric that you want to analyze.
Oh, that feature is the feature that I understand is that Power BI allows now, it's a preview feature, but you can have your visuals, just about any of the visuals, be personalized. And I actually have that in place in some of my reporting at my company. So you go into the feature of the report, you enable personalized visuals. When you publish it, it's up there in the service, and they can change which measure is being displayed. They can change it from a bar chart to a line chart. Absolutely. And this is supported for nearly all the visuals. Probably not the decomposition tree, but.
Right. And you can even select the measures that you want to view as well. So kind of referencing, talking about, yeah.
And so you give your end user the capability to say, well, they didn't really want to see it in percentage. They wanted to see the raw dollars, and then they can bookmark that in order to have it their way. Interesting feature, but also brings to mind questions I'd have on consistency of a brand new audience in using a report. Like if they start talking with each other and one's like, well, you turn this into a pie chart and it tells you a different story.
Right.
So you gotta use it wisely.
Yep, and you can change the axes, and that can lead to potentially to more confusion. So that's more of an advanced feature, I would say.
Yep. All right, what do you think, Steve?
Well, I think we're kind of playing out. We've got about 15 people remaining in the group.
Right.
This has been fun. And thank you, Pedro, again, for showing that very, very interesting tool.
Thank you, guys. Thanks for having me.
And so September 24th, 2 o'clock, same bat channel.
Put that last slide up and we can wrap everybody out. Thanks for coming, everybody.
All right.
Take that time down, put it on your calendars. See you there. All that sort of stuff. Everybody can start checking out. Bye. You got that slide up yet?
I have to share, I guess.
Yes.
see, share here, boom, and boom, and there.
Okay, there we go.
And
You'll be making these slides. Somehow, can you get a link to them, or if they're off OneDrive, into the chat room and onto the site?
They are on the site, on the Power BI user group site now, right? Where you registered, you just go to the library for the Green Bay group, and
Excellent.
it's right there in the library.
Excellent. Sounds good. I think that went great, guys. Thanks for
good job.
organizing and getting us some great presenters. We've got some great feedback in the chat, and everybody's kind of coasting out, but this was a good day.
Yeah,
Yes,
well
sir.
done.
All right.
We'll talk to you guys probably we'll get another meeting set up in a week or so, 2 weeks, 3 weeks for the next
Sounds good.
one. All right.
Thanks, Greg.
See you guys. Bye-bye.
See you guys
So
later.
long, everybody.
Bye.